Hi, so it's Olaide again. This tutorial is the second in the series on how to write quantitative reports. This video in particular will cover how to write the method section. Right, so this is a quick reminder of the overall structure of the report. You've got the title, the abstract, and the introduction, which we've covered in the last video. The method, which we're covering today, includes the participants, the materials, the design, the procedure, and the scoring. Then there's the results, the discussion, the references, and the appendix, which will all be covered in the next tutorial. Straight after the introduction, there is the method section. This needs to be written in enough detail so that if anyone wants to replicate the study, they can do so by reading this section. That being said, don't go overboard with irrelevant information. The method section is broken down into participants, material, design, which is optional, procedure, and scoring, which is also optional. Before I go on, I think it's important to take note of the subsections. You need to make sure that these subsections are relevant to your report. For example, you might not have materials, but you may have stimuli or apparatus instead. Look this up in the APA publication manual for clarification, or speak to one of your academic mentors, so myself or Bernard. If you have not already, I do suggest you buy the manual. You will need it for the duration of your time at university. Okay, so scoring is only appropriate if you have transformed some sort of behavior into a numeric value. For example, when you have numerical scores from a questionnaire, or when you have scores from an observation sheet. These are the only times that you will have a scoring section within your methodology. Okay, so the first part of the methods is usually the participant section. But please note that you only use the word participant when you are referring to humans. You use the term subject when you are referring to non-human animals such as dogs or mice or whatever it is. In this section, you need to describe who is being studied. How were they selected and why were they selected? You need to include information such as their age, along with the age range, the mean age, and the standard deviation. You can include things like ethnicity, background, anything like that. But please make sure that information you are collecting and noting is relevant to the study. For example, you can include things like religious background, but only if it is relevant to the study. Age is always important in psychology and should always be collected and given in the participation section. It is a good idea to include the recruitment procedure, as well as the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Inclusion criteria refers to the traits and factors that participants need to have in order to take part in the study. Exclusion criteria are the traits and factors that need to be avoided in participants. For example, if you're carrying out a study on how people learn languages, you will need to include people who speak the language that the instructions are being provided in. For example, native English speakers. The exclusion criteria would include people who already speak the language that's being taught. For example, if you were teaching French, it would be people who already speak French, because if they already know the language, then it defeats the purpose of the study, right? You will also need to include where these participants are from. So where did you get them? What was the sampling technique? And if people were contacted but did not participate, and you know the reason for this, this should also be included. An example is provided on the screen. 50 participants completed all conditions of this study, 25 male and 25 female. Ages ranged from 18 to 39 years, mean 24.26, standard deviation 3.52 years. Participants were all undergraduate students at London Metropolitan University who took part for free admission into the nightclub. All participants were naive to the purpose of the experiment. Again, this is a very generic participant section, and it does not include the sampling method or the inclusion or exclusion criteria. Your textbook should include details on sampling methods. Please refresh your memory on this before writing this section. Next up, there is the material section. This could also be the apparatus or stimuli section depending on your report, as discussed earlier. Essentially, this is where you discuss what equipment or instruments you have used to collect your data. If you've used questionnaires, you would provide details of the questionnaires here. If a computer program was used, you would include details on the computer and the program. Whatever material or stimulus was used, you would include details here. There is an example on the screen which reads, "Considered opinion of attractiveness rating scale, CORE, Legless, 1994, was used to ascertain participants' opinion of the physical attractiveness of the Stooges. This scale is a 30-item self-report questionnaire containing a 5-point Likert response scale ranging from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. Minga, 2003, found that compared to other assessment scales, the CORE is a better measure for discriminating between ugly and attractive people and has good internal consistency, Cronbach alpha 0.76. If you can't already tell, all the examples used in these tutorials are completely fictional. They come from Andy Field's 2018. Just a bit of light-hearted fun. But anyway, back to being serious. Please note that if you are using the questionnaire, including the Cronbach alpha is essential. You may also want to include 1 or 2 examples of questions and also include a blank copy of the questionnaire within the appendix. There is no need for an apparatus section unless you have a really complex apparatus. There is no need to list objects such as paper, pencils, chairs, tables, that kind of thing. Only include things that have literally helped you collect data. Moving on to the design section. Normally, you would only include this section if your experimental design is complicated in that there are several independent and dependent variables. Otherwise, this information could all be included in the procedure section. There is an example on the screen. It reads, "A repeated measures design was used. There were 2 independent variables, the lighting used in the nightclub, so bright or dim, and then the level of alcohol consumed, so none or 6 pints. The dependent measure analysed was the participants' rating of physical attractiveness, so the CORE scale." And that's pretty much it for the design section. Right, so the procedure, last but not least. This is the last part of the method section, and Bernard likes to use the analogy of a recipe, which in actual fact works quite well. So think of this like a recipe, a step-by-step guide for someone who wants to follow and replicate your work. So in this case, it's not pancakes or your teriyaki salmon, it's your research. So how was all of your data gathered? Were the participants run individually or in small groups? Was the research conducted in labs or in a field setting? How were the dependent variables addressed? How was the data itself collected? Was it via questionnaires or on a computer? If it was experimental via computer, how far away from the screen did the participants sit? What did the participants see on the screen? How did the participants input their responses? Basically, you need to provide enough detail for the study to be replicated in exactly the same way. But of course, again, don't go overboard and include information that wouldn't be relevant in collecting data. And that's it for the methodology. So the next video will look at the results, discussion, reference list, and the appendix. But that's it for now. So, as per usual, your academic mentors are here to support you. So if you do need any further support with report writing or anything else, please do give us a shout. We hope to hear from you soon. Bye.